Hey people, what's up? What's up? Just gonna take a minute here and share this out, and I'll be starting soon. Don't mind my loud keyboard. Hello, I don't know how to see who's watching though. Hello, whoever you are. How do you do that? Hmm. Hello. I don't know who you are. Does anyone know how to do that on a live? Hmm. I've seen other people on lives and they seem to know who's watching, but I have no idea how they know. Oh, that's weird. How do I mute that? All right, well, anyways. All right, so I'm going to get started. Hello and welcome to the Go the Distance podcast series. My name is Sadie, and you can find my social media links at milehighradio.com/go-the-distance. And thank you to Lynn Burnett and Mile High Radio for making all of this possible. If you're new, please check out my previous episodes on shows.pippa.io/go-the-distance. And today's episode is about parenting and how to help your child through behaviors that are difficult and hard to handle. Hey Drew, how's it going? So basically what I want to talk about today, and I'm actually doing this one unscripted. Usually I do a little writing before I record, but I feel like this is something I know quite a bit about, and so here goes. What I've learned through my education, and I've studied child and family studies in university, and I also studied child development in my program of early childhood education in college. So I've learned a lot about how sort of the human mind and the human body grow as we age. And I've actually studied humans all the way up, into aging. I took a class about how to age successfully in university as well, and there's quite a bit of up-and-coming research around that as well. So developing through life is something that sort of sometimes we just let it happen, and we don't really think about how our lives are unfolding and how things are going, and it's really easy to miss really important things that could change our lives for the better and change the lives of people that we love as well. So the biggest thing that I've learned is that all behavior is communication. So whether it's positive or negative behavior, it's a form of communication. The person expressing the behavior may or may not have the words to tell you what they want to tell you, but they're using their behavior as a means to express themselves. So trying to think of a little example here. If, let's say you're at the grocery store and your child's throwing a tantrum because they really want that chocolate bar that the grocery store is ever so kindly put right in the aisle as you're checking out, and your child throws themselves down, has a freak out, can't really get control of their behavior and themselves. And I've seen parents just leave their carts full of groceries and walk out of the grocery store. I worked in grocery stores in the past. So in that moment, as a parent, it's really hard to stop yourself, A, from feeling frustrated, and B, from taking, letting yourself get angry and frustrated. And it's really important to take that time to think, okay, what is the need here? Why is my child throwing themselves around for a chocolate bar? Maybe the child's hungry, because I know for myself, if I'm super hungry, I want something sugary and sweet, because actually on a biological level, something that is already broken down into sugars is easier for your brain to access sugar, which is what it uses to function. So maybe a snack would be a good idea next time before going into the grocery store, so that those hunger pains don't come to your child while you're at the checkout. Not that, cookies are the best option, but I know a lot of grocery stores, the bakery will have free cookies for kids or for anyone. So if that's something that's happening all the time, if your child's throwing themselves down for that treat, maybe you can have a cookie while you shop and try to turn it into a positive experience before that outburst happens. Trying to think of another example. If your child is constantly crying and constantly getting upset over something that to you seems like not a big deal, but they seem to have this massive emotional reaction to something you consider to be a small problem. The thing about being an adult is we've had X amount of years to experience all of these things, and we've learned and gained skills and gained knowledge and insight, and we've been through those sort of situations before. And so in order to get to a point where when you're an adult, you're able to just accept those situations for happening and not get too emotionally invested in it, you have to get emotionally invested in it, figure out how to get through it, and then you have a way of kind of working it out in your own mind. But as a child, you haven't had those experiences, and you haven't had those little experiments, I guess you could call it, with handling things. And in order to kind of prepare your child for handling tough situations, it's important to kind of pre-talk about things that might happen. So if you're going out to the shopping mall and you know that your child really loves toys and is probably going to ask you for, to spend money on stuff that you don't really have money for, have that conversation before you go, because then in the moment, that conversation is a short time ago and it's easy to access for the brain. If it's one of those things that you've talked about like months ago and you're so frustrated because it still keeps happening, well, then you need to be having that conversation right before it's going to happen. Because those things are things that children are still developing and growing, and as children develop and grow, other things will so if this area of your child's brain is growing, this area might take a back step, and they might unlearn something, or they might seem like they've forgotten what they previously knew. And what needs to happen is once they've mastered the new thing, the old thing kind of has to be brought up again and kind of refresh in the brain, because you'll see it when kids are little. They'll know how to spell their name, or they'll know something, and then they learn something else really big, and suddenly they don't know how to spell their name, or they don't know, like, whatever it might be. And so it's really important to constantly be reteaching, because children are always learning and growing, and so there's so much going on, and for them to access those parts of their brain, it's like you have to kind of re-give that pathway. It's like somebody who lost the map to the place that they're supposed to be going. Another important part is that children don't have the ability to think the same way as adults do. We've had our whole lives to gain the type of brain behavior that we have, and children just don't have that skill. So it's constant, like I said, constant reminders, constant refreshing of those lessons that are important. I see it with my students. I teach, and it's like you could talk about it one day and they understand it that day, but then the next day they come back and they've forgotten, but they understood it in the moment. So what that tells you is that they have an understanding of that with you, but they don't have it on an independent level. And it takes a lot of work to get something to an independent level of understanding. And that's where it becomes frustrating, because you think, oh, well, we did it yesterday and they got it. Why don't they get it today? Well, that's because 100 other things have happened between that and the next day, and it just has to be retaught and re-explored. And it also takes practice at an independent level with guidance, with those little reminders throughout the process. Next you need to do this, next you need to do that, in order for them to build strong neural pathways. Children who are expressing themselves with behavior are often trying to tell you something, and like I said, whether it's positive or negative, it's some form of communication. And that's always so important to remember as a parent, because if they're expressing themselves through behavior, chances are they probably don't have the words to tell you or a way to tell you that makes sense, so they're showing you instead. Something else I wanted to talk about is the terrible twos. In child development, when I was learning about this, basically the terrible twos are when a human starts to realize that they have power and control. And it's really important to feed that power and control in a positive way, because that kid who's throwing themselves on the grocery store floor every week at the grocery store and walks out with a chocolate bar that they threw themselves down for has learned that that's how they get a chocolate bar. The mother's frustrated, or the father is frustrated, the parent, the guardian, whoever it may be, but the child's winning in the end. They're using that behavior, that form of communication that they found out it works, and they're being successful because they're getting what they want. That need for sugar is being met by performing that behavior and by doing those things. And so in order for children to learn to do things in an appropriate way, it's important to feed those needs in a positive way. So teach your child, if you are hungry and you want something to eat, you need to ask politely. So having that conversation, I'm not going to buy you a chocolate bar today because you threw yourself down on the ground. Next time when you're hungry, you can ask me, can I please have a chocolate bar? Or, have that conversation. Teach them the appropriate way, but don't meet that need. Don't give that satisfaction of being successful by throwing themselves down on the ground, because it's not an appropriate way for people to gain access to something that they need. an appropriate way to do that is to use our words and to be kind and to express ourselves in a positive way. Hey, I feel hungry. Can I please have something to eat? Is much more appropriate than throwing ourselves down on the ground. And when children are supported in a positive way, those are the neural pathways that you're teaching and that you're training, and that's the path that you're setting your child up for. If you are giving into those negative attention needs, those are the pathways that you're lighting up for your child, and those are the pathways that are going to become instinctual, and they're going to become their way of accessing what they need. And so it's really important to provide neural pathways for the way that you want your child to behave. If you're constantly frustrated and just letting them behave how they want and then giving in and not holding your stance and staying true to what you said, if you said no to the chocolate bar in the lineup and the child still throws themselves down and they still make a big scene, by changing your answer to yes, you're just teaching them that that's still an appropriate way. You've already said no, but now by the child doing X, Y, Z, throwing themselves down, kicking and screaming, calling their moms an F and B and all of these things, and I've seen that before, and it's not appropriate, but it's effective because we give into it. It evokes emotion inside of us, and it causes us to just throw in the towel, just say, all right, fine, have it. I'm done with this. I don't want to deal with you. Have whatever you want. But those behaviors are where children learn that they can get what they want with negative behavior, and that's when we teach them a negative way to get what they need. But like I said before, by having that conversation before going into the grocery store or as you're going to get the cookie at the bakery, just say, I know that you sometimes get hungry and want a chocolate bar, but we can't afford a chocolate bar today, so we're going to go and see if the bakery has a cookie for us. And they might not have any, and that's okay too. We could pick out a snack that we could have in the car on the way home. You're setting your child up for accepting disappointment. You're not going to get the chocolate bar. We can't afford it. That's already stated and over with. We're going to go to the bakery and see if they have a cookie. They might not. And if they don't, here's another solution that will happen kind of no matter what. So when you teach your child beforehand, you're lighting up those neural pathways kind of preemptively, and then when they get to that situation, instead of going down that route that they've always gone down of throwing a tantrum, they have another choice. They might still have a tantrum, and it might still be difficult, but the next time you do it, and the next time you do it, and the next time you do it, is constantly going to reinforce that positive attention that you want them to seek. I've worked with children who constantly seek negative attention, and it's what they live for. It's like you try to give positive attention and they shut it down. All they want is that negative because they feed off the strength of that positive, they should feed off the strength of positive, but sometimes we get so caught up that we feed that negative attention, and that becomes the desire, and the positive attention goes by the wayside. And those are the hard behaviors to deal with because they've been reinforced so many times in the past that it's a really strong neural connection, and it's really hard to break that. So when you find yourself struggling to break that cycle, it's so important to hold yourself accountable to what you said to your child, because every time that you break that, every time that you give in to that demand or that negative attention, they're learning, oh, I can push her or him this much further and still get what I want. So the next time that you go to try your positive attention, they're going to know, oh, but remember last time I just pushed it that little bit more and then I got what I wanted in a negative way. And so by continually kind of like breaking your ground, you're sort of pushing the limit further and further and further for them, and they're learning that they can push it that far and then still get the negative attention. And something that happens when you're dealing with behavior and trying to change behaviors is called an extinction burst. And so you'll be, trying these positive things and you're getting somewhere, and then something little happens and you kind of take a couple steps back, and then you keep going, and then you kind of take a couple steps back. And then at the very end, when that behavior is about to be completely replaced in the brain, the child, the subconscious almost, will try everything they've ever tried to get that negative attention. And that's usually when we give up as caregivers, because you're like, oh my goodness, we've worked so hard, and now suddenly I'm seeing all these behaviors that I haven't seen in months. And that's the moment when you have to keep pushing forward, because that's the moment where the child's going to learn, okay, I can try this, and keep going, all these things, and it's not going to work. This is my new way of accessing the attention that I want. And if you do give up, you've now taken them for months of correcting the behavior, and now they have that in their subconscious. They have months they can push and still win with that negative attention. So it's so important to hold your ground and to just really be aware of the level of the behavior, and just realize that it takes time and it takes practice and it takes repetition over and over and over and over again in order to teach a new behavior, especially when it's a neural pathway that's set in place when their brains were developing between the ages of 0 and 6. Those neural pathways that are created in that time of life are very strong. That is the part of the body that is developing at that time, and that's the part of the body that is doing the most growth. So those neural connections and neural pathways are really powerful. And so to be able to redirect those neural pathways, it takes a lot of work. And it's worth it, and it's hard. But when you finally break those behaviors and start seeing some positive behaviors and some positive attention seeking, that's when you'll feel that sense of relief of, oh my goodness, it's finally working. I finally was able to break the cycle of my child's tantrums or whatever it might be. Now, all of this is coming from me, who is not a parent, so I can't speak from experience from, my own children. However, I've been working with children I've been babysitting since I was 12 years old, so I guess that's 16 years I've been working with kids. And even before that, my mom, she did daycare for some families. So, I mean, I've always kind of been around, and I have 3 siblings, so I've always kind of been around parenting. Of course, I've been around parenting. I'm a child, so have a parent. But it's always kind of been something that I'm fascinated with and interested in. And so I know I can't really say I've been there in the moment of like the frustration in the grocery store of your child throwing a tantrum and that kind of thing, but I have seen it, and I have learned about child development and neurodevelopment. And so I hope that people find this helpful and can apply this to their own lives. And if you have questions or comments about anything I've said, please stop by my Facebook group. It's www.facebook.com/groups/Go the Distance podcasts. So if you have anything to say, feel free to drop a line on that group. I think you have to request an invite, but I will accept you as soon as I get it. And I'm going to ask a question to you guys. What is something with parenting that you have a question about? So is there anything that you would like a future podcast to be about, or part of a future podcast to be about? Or maybe does anyone have a little nugget, a little piece of information that they'd like to share with others about parenting? So thanks again for tuning in, and remember to go the distance, because life doesn't stand still.